Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison, the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison, and God forbid you end up in prison. I want to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, first off, thank you to Enos. He donated another 10 bucks, 20 bucks in the past few days, putting that down in here. I'm going to talk about that more at the end. I go in the junkie with the monkey fun. Maybe have a little monkey with a little rodeo hat riding Sasha's back. Somebody said they do something like that in Texas. I'll talk about that at the end though. So the last two videos have led to this one. So if you go back 2 videos, it talks about how basically, went from shooting up for the first time to going to a crazy Christian cult-like rehab to going to the psych ward to going to jail, getting out of jail for 2 weeks, going to rehab, and meeting who was the biggest coke dealer probably in a quarter to half of the city. And which time, that's when I got that idea. Okay, I've got my connect, I can jump back on. Now I'm in drug court, and drug court back then was not the way it was. See, I did drug court twice. Second time I graduated was the speaker, was like a model person for it, but the first time I was not wanting to get clean at all. And the second time, they drug tested 3 times a week. The first time, it was only once a week. See, you call this number, it's called color code. So, the first time I was in it, color code was red. And they were going to drug test you once a week. Every 2 or 3 months, they drug test you twice a week. They do it on a Saturday. That's how they'd get people. If you forgot to call, and you didn't show up Saturday, you had to spend a weekend in jail, guaranteed. The second time I did it, the color code was brown, which was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and still sometimes Saturday. But in the first time, people could get by with it. They'd wait until they got drug tested. So say they got drug tested on a Monday, they knew it was unlikely they'd get drug tested at least until the following Monday. So as soon as they got tested, they'd go off and get high. Didn't do that. Now, I was determined to get back into dealing. I watched a lot of movies, and I like to think that I could have been somebody like George Jung or, watched Belly and all these other things like that. But anyway, so I told the dealer who was still in rehab, who still had a couple weeks in rehab, I wanted to get started. Now, they'd take us out places, and they'd let us stay at places. Like we went to a community college to see if we get signed up. When we were there, he had one of his buddies drive up, and I was like, whoa, these guys are really doing it. His buddy showed up in an Escalade with 24s with snakeskin interior, brought him TGI Fridays. He called him and told him, hey, bring me some TGI Fridays. He showed up, brought him that. Introductions were made. So I'm trying to get started before he gets out. Don't have a whole lot of money, got a couple $100s. I know drug dealers like jewelry. Now, I'm not glorifying this stuff. Spent my 20s in federal prison. Should have been having fun being a kid. Didn't get to do that. 44 friends I've had under the age of 35 died from drugs or drug-related violence. Not glorifying this stuff at all, but it's my story. Got to tell it. Maybe somebody will learn something from it. So, I get them to come to my mom's shop. Mom is a jewelry shop. The one guy likes this watch. It's not diamonds, they're called Swarovski crystals. It's not cubic zirconia, but it's not diamonds, but it looks like diamonds. And there's a watch that's like $600-700, but wholesale it's $200. So I bought that watch, and I traded it to him for what would retail as $450, which would be a half O. And I had just a few people, just 3 people that I was dealing with. Now, I had a friend that I met in the rehab that ended up moving into the halfway house. I was living in a halfway house that's 4 addicts run by addicts. There's like an association of 7 of them. There's no government involvement. There's also somebody who moves in the halfway house. He just got out of the 4-month jail drug program. Both of them are in drug court. The guy who I was in rehab with was banging the guy who just got out of the 4-month jail program. The guy who was in the jail program, we're going to call Joey. The guy who I was in rehab with, we're going to call Denny. Denny was banging Joey's girlfriend when Joey's girlfriend was in rehab. So Joey ends up my roommate. Denny ends up in the room next to us. They meet and shake hands, and Joey says, oh, so you're the guy who's been banging my girlfriend. And Denny's like, and I just busted out laughing. I was like, awkward. So me and Joey, Danny's back, he's selling pills, mostly just finding people with scripts, buying the whole script, selling off bit by bit. I'm getting into selling, doing my thing. So I only have 3 people that I'm getting stuff, through. I'm going to community college. There's word that there's going to be a giant party up on Bent Mountain, which is a mountain on the outskirts of the city, way up the mountain, way out in the country. This guy's family moved to California, and he had this house that was just like, it's like probably a half-mile dirt driveway to where people just partied like crazy. And I bagged up probably 50 to 100 of these little .3 bags that I was calling half G's, and went up there, and I had a switchblade on me, and I was meeting people doing this. They asked me who I was, what to call me. And if you ever seen the movie Blade, the bad guy was Frost, and that's how it started. But some people said Frosty because it was a snowman and all this other stuff. I met two people in particular. Before I get to this though, when I first bought that half-o, I left it in my car that night. Being an addict, I stayed up about half the night thinking about going out there and doing it, but I didn't. I managed not to do it. But it's kind of like sitting in a barber shop. Eventually you're going to get a haircut. If you're an addict and you're around drugs, pretty soon or later you're going to end up using them. Okay, it's inevitable. But these two guys who I met at this party up on this mountain, they live in the Salem area, which is near Roanoke College, which is back then was one of the top 5 most expensive colleges in the country. So a lot of kids there with a lot of money. Okay, I say kids, but I mean they were older than me at the time. All the people who were in the college, I mean, I was like, I was a kid myself. Now, so these two guys who I meet that are best friends end up becoming enemies because they end up not liking each other and talking all kinds of stuff about each other to me because they're trying to outsell each other. The one's making more money and keeping more money. He's better with his money than the other. He's getting like 2 O's every other day. The other one's getting anywhere from a half O to an O every day, but he doesn't save any of his money. Keep asking me up front, I wasn't going to do it. And it just kind of worked its way up. And I remember when I was an addict, I mean, and I didn't have a connection. See, you take away the connection, you keep the addiction. I'm going to lose every penny I have, which is all inevitably going to happen. But before this, you know, I went to jail and all that, I'd sold the stereo out of my car. So my car didn't have a stereo in it. So when I first made this money, the first thing I did is I went and I spent $2,000 to get a W3 subwoofer in the trunk, the whole sounds, a whole bunch of stuff put in it. And I showed up. I remember showing up at my mom's house, and she basically was like, "Where did you get that?" And how it worked was the basic agreement was if I was a full-time student and doing this thing, you know, she ended up giving me a few bucks for money, usually like $100 for gas and food a week. You know, as long as I was going to school and as long as my grades were good, which they were, they're excellent. It's like giving me a chance to go to college. She was, I mean, provided me with every opportunity. I was the one choosing to be crazy at this time. And basically, she gave me that look like, yeah, and you wonder why you're living in a halfway house, why you can't be living at home. You know, she didn't say that, but basically it was the attitude. She was letting me know she wasn't dumb. And my dad, who'd had me put in jail, I remember being kind of cheeky. I pulled out the wad of money. It's like, "Oh, well, do you need a few dollars?" He gave me like a 20, and I like, "Oh, thank you." And I pulled out my wad and put it on top of that. There were other times too. See, I ended up keeping a safe at my mom's house. I'd visit there on the weekends. I wasn't allowed to stay there. I was, you know, rip and run doing what I was doing. But I kept a safe there that I kept the money at. And there was one time, I can't remember, she couldn't find her bank card or something. And it was like a Sunday, so couldn't get money out. Asked to find a few bucks, and which was a rare thing. She doesn't need money, anything. She just couldn't find her card. And I was getting ready to go re-up. At the time, I was going to get an eighth of, it's called a Big 8, 4.5, and it cost $32.50. And what I did is I take 520s, 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 rubber banded off at 1,000. I had 3 stacks of those, and then I had some spare money on top, and I had it pulled out, and I had my back turned. She walked up behind me, and I dropped it on the floor, and it thud, the money hit the ground. She didn't say anything, I didn't say anything, pulled it up. I was like, oh man. She gave me that look again, like, wonder why you're not living at the house. Now, I did not have to be living this way. I could have been going to college and just living like a kid, but like I was chasing this like fictional dream of stuff that I'd like made in my head off of listening to too much OJ the Juice Man, Gucci Man, and watching George Jung on Blow for too much time. Now I make my own choice, don't blame media on a bit of it, but you know, I had this whole image of who I was going to try to make myself into, and it was really taking off. Now something that I did, I mean, drug deal with morals sounds like ironic, sounds like an oxymoron. Something that I found out was isotal was something that I was starting to re-rock it with. Now, re-rock, what that means is it comes in a rock, people crush it, then they do that. I was crushing all the powder, mixing a 50% isotal mixture, 50% mix, and then recompressing it so it's in a chunk. Re-rocked it with isotal for a couple reasons. Number one, I'd make double my money. I turned 1 into 2, put a 50% mixture, so it's literally making double the money. Second is, you cannot cook it. If it's mixed with isotal, you can't cook it into rock. People who shoot it, it won't work. It'll break the thing. It'll clog up their rig. So people that shot it up, people that smoked it, were living pitifully. It was hard to watch. It was hard to see. I didn't like watching that. I hated seeing that. So basically, the people who I was looking to deal with were college kids that got money from their parents, that used on Friday, Saturday, sometimes carried it over to Sunday, that didn't use during the week, that weren't out robbing, weren't out stealing, weren't out pawning stuff. They were people that had a few extra bucks, wanted to have a good time on the weekend, and that's how I justified it to myself. It wasn't right, but that's what I did. So I made it so then my dope was not possible to smoke, was not possible to shoot. And not only did that prevent me from having to, deal with people that were, down and out and taking advantage of that, but those people also are higher risk. Those people are likely to get arrested, then tell on me. In addition to that, it's making crack money off coke, but without the crack risks. So that was the thing. People always said, I looked at it like from business strategies, how I looked at it. People always say, well, if I'm not selling it for at least 60 a G, it's not worth it. Well, I got to thinking about it, and I was like, well, it absolutely would be worth it if they were coming back more and more, because it costs less, because they thought they'd get a better deal. So really, in reality, they were getting half purity, but they thought they were getting it because it was in one chunk. I mean, I swear everybody thought if it was in one chunk, then it was untouched. And that was the whole philosophy that I had behind it. Now, it got to where Joey, my roommate, he would basically be my runner. He'd run it out to the cars. He'd run out the cars. We had an apartment complex that one of our friends' dads owned, and he had an apartment on the 3rd floor. I'd hit him off for letting us, with some for free, for letting us stay in his apartment. Joe would run it back and forth to the cars. I'd pick up the phone. He'd run it back and forth. I'd watch out the window. Joey started taking a little longer to get it out of the car, to deliver it out to the cars. And I was getting complaints from people. Come to find out, he was pinching some off to keep for himself, stealing some. So I ended up having to singe it with a lighter so then he couldn't get into it. That was another thing. Now, at this time, was I clean? Absolutely not. I was not. Every Saturday, Friday or Saturday night, I'd take pretty substantial amount of LSD. That was the main thing I was doing. So I was under the impression that you couldn't urine test for that. My second time in drug court, I learned different. I heard in drug court, I heard somebody fail for LSD. You've never heard a room of 100 drug addicts gasp and whisper. I've never seen a judge hit the hammer before, but the judge hit the hammer because so many people were whispering. You can test for that? I thought you had to spinal tap. Yeah, I thought it's spinal, like Mike Tyson thought they'd do a spinal tap. That wasn't so, but never got caught for that, and I continued to do that. So this whole thing continued about. Denny, the guy who's in the room next door, he'd get some, deal some, but it was ironic because it was a halfway house, but pretty much everybody in the halfway house was selling drugs. I mean, it was the craziest thing you've ever seen. So you think it's a good place where people are doing the recovery thing? No, it absolutely 100% was not. There are a lot of stories of stuff in between that happened that I'm going to get into, and I will tell in the I'll tell in the one after this. But basically, it kept on about this until I found a way to beat drug court's $1 million drug testing system that was unbeatable. I told this before, the story about that, which is why I'm going to do 2 in a day, but I've got more to add to it. I just talked about how I beat the test, but I didn't talk about too much of the specifics about what else was going on during that time. It never ends up good. I mean, as much money as I ever had, I never had credit. So I mean, I was living in a halfway house. I mean, look at it for what it is. I mean, look back at it now, it's stupid. Thought I was doing something special, something cool, something good. Absolutely not. It was completely foolish and completely dumb. Anyway, I'll tell more about the next one. In the next one about that, what happened during that. This is just a brief rundown of the events and how they got to where they were. See, I ended up being like #1 dealer for a number of kingpins, you know, until either they end up going to jail, whatever happened, then move on. And whenever that would happen, I'd usually end up spending up every penny that I had, because I still had the addiction, but if I didn't have the connection, couldn't be making the money. So I lived couch to couch for a long time. Basically, I was a homeless drug addict for the majority of the time, from when I was 16 to the time I was 20. The majority of that time, I was a homeless drug addict, drug dealer. Because even when I did have money, pockets full of it, I didn't have a place. I didn't have credit. So as much money as what good was it? And it's basically, if you have a whole box full of batteries, some are brand new, some are used, and you take those batteries and you put them in a clock. You don't know which set you got. You might have got the brand new set. You might get the ones that are almost all the way dead. That's pretty much the type of analogy you can think of when it comes to drug dealing and when it comes to using, especially opiates. Sooner or later, your time's going to run out. You might get the brand new set. It might last you a good minute. It might last you a good long time. But sooner or later, those batteries are going to run dead. You might get the bad set. It might run dead in no time. Look at Dickie. Dickie, I told y'all about his story. Dickie sold dope for what, 2 months, and got a 5-year federal sentence. Hadn't never sold dope for 2 months. He got the low batteries. Now certain things, of course, I thought risk management and can outsmart them and everything else, and ultimately for actually being a drug dealer, I got a menial amount of time in a drug program. For having a deal that took place in my apartment that I did not arrange or profit off of, I got 8 years in federal prison. They asked for 15. So anyway, if you liked the video, if you think I earned it, press the like button. If not, that is 17 minutes and 10 seconds of your life in which you will never ever get back, and I do apologize for that. So yeah, the money, Enos, thank you again, buddy. Put it in there. The deal is, any money that gets donated to this, I'm going to put it in to possibly getting a pet monkey, junkie with a monkey. Think that'd be cool. But something else I've been looking at, and I'm preparing the letters to send out now, is I know some really high-level, high-profile criminals that are in federal prison, and it's been an interesting idea that maybe I give them a few bucks, they get on the phone with me, we have a phone conversation, I give them a few bucks for it. See, you only get 300 minutes a month in the federal system for phone calls. You have to pay for those minutes. So if they take 15 minutes of their time to talk to me, that's 15 minutes they're not going to have to talk to somebody else. So they're good enough to take their time. And it also costs money, anywhere from $1.50 up to $10 for a 15-minute phone call. So I figure, you know, some of these people, if I give them like 50 bucks or so for a 15-minute phone call, I figure that'd be right, you know what I mean? I want to help them out however I can too, you know, but also I think it would make great stuff. I know a Caribbean drug lord that had a 500-kilo conspiracy. I know a guy who was one of the most notorious gangsters to ever come out of Florida, ever, like a legend, that might do it. You know, I don't know if they're, which ones are, which ones aren't willing to, but just a phone conversation, just us talking, you know. Think it might be something interesting. So Enos, thank you again so much, buddy. And I'm still new to this thing. You know, I've only been doing this for about 4 months now. It's growing really quick, and I do a lot of videos, so it looks like I'm more established than I am. But this is new. I'm still new to this. I'm still getting a rhythm, still getting a way about it. So thank you guys. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here with me, thank you so much. I mean, it's really been incredible, because there have been a solid bunch of people that have been here for a long time now, and it's been cool, like, getting to know y'all, because I'm a recluse. I mean, pretty much, like, I say I'm like Edward Scissorhands. You know, he came down from the mountain, hung out to people for a minute, realized they don't understand me, and I don't really like them. So I just went up on the mountain, back on the mountain, and pretty much just train jiu-jitsu and judo, and that's all I do. And outside of that, I don't have a social life. Don't go out, don't party, don't drink, gamble, go to clubs, whatever. So, you know, this is like the most socialized I've been in probably the amount of time since I've been out of prison. So thank you guys. Y'all become my friends. You really have. It's been an interesting thing, and keep it rolling. So if you've watched till now, it's been 20 minutes. That's gone from your life. I hope you liked the video. If you did, press the like button. If not, oh, I'm sorry.